Let's speak to Patty Culhane, who's live in Washington for us. And Patty, no actual specific measures mentioned by Obama there, but he's asked his vice president to lead the team. And Joe Biden is a long-time advocate of more gun control, isn't he?
He is, and we have some idea, basically, of what they're going to be looking at. The White House has already laid it out. Renewing the assault weapons ban that expired about 8 years ago, closing what they call that loophole in background checks. I want to explain to people who possibly don't know, if you buy a gun from a gun store, you have to go through a background check. If you go to a gun show and buy from a private owner in this country, it doesn't matter what you've done in your past. If you're a felon, if you've been hospitalized for mental illness, they won't know it, and they will sell you the gun. He wants to close that loophole. I think it's important to point out, when we talk about the assault weapons ban, and it'll be interesting to see, obviously it was a little bit strange, the first question after that speech was on the fiscal cliff. Be interesting to see if any of the reporters point out one of the things that the president was saying. He says it's time to stop selling of these assault weapons. It's time to stop selling these high-capacity ammunition clips. Now, the key word there is selling. The past assault ban that he's referring to about renewing did nothing to get rid of the guns that are in this country right now. There's really no actual statistics on how many guns are in America because, like I said, many of these guns don't have to be registered. Estimates range from about 200 million to 300 million guns. Just to give you an idea, gun sales have been skyrocketing from the moment of the shooting in Connecticut. Just in November, before the shooting, 2 million guns were sold in America. No one in Washington so far has been talking about doing anything to get rid of the assault weapons that are currently in private hands, to do anything with those high-capacity ammunition clips that people currently own. There has been very limited talk, just a couple of people really, and not in Washington, saying that the country should look at some sort of buyback program like we saw in Australia, but we did not hear the president endorse that, and I think that is an important distinction. I'll be interested to see if the White House press corps, those in the front row who get to ask questions, pick up on that very, I think, important distinction.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because there is this sort of staunch commitment by a large part of the American population towards their guns, towards their weapons, and as he pointed out, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. Obama's clearly betting on a sort of public consensus, a wave of emotion after the Connecticut shootings to try and carry some kind of gun control through. Do you think he's got that?
Well, you know, and I thought that was very interesting because he said they will return their recommendations to me in January. Some of the biggest gun control advocates have been very harsh critics of this president for not speaking out sooner, for not coming out with ideas immediately after, because the emotion in this country, it is still raw. People are still consumed by this shooting. Just today, we're seeing a teacher, a first-grade teacher, being buried. She hid her students in a closet, stood in front of the gunman. She's going to be buried today. Her name was Vicky Soto. 6 other children between the ages of 6 and 7 are being buried. We are watching their coffins being carried into churches. We are hearing their families tell stories of what they loved, dancing and drawing and football teams. So it is still very much consuming the country. And the advocates of gun control have been telling this president that there is a short window, that he needs to capitalize on this moment because it is the first time in about a decade that Americans have been openly talking about their belief on gun control. So the president is indicating that he's going to try and move fairly quickly on this. I have to tell you, though, he is going to get some pushback. We know that the National Rifle Association, a very powerful and somewhat feared lobby in Washington, has come out and said that they are willing to work to make sure that this tragedy doesn't happen again. But you saw the president right there, and I think this is important. He said it's going to take a wave of Americans. It's going to take courage. Now, some gun supporters in Congress have been pretty quiet in these last 4 days, but they're starting to come out. Some important Republicans especially have been saying that they don't think gun control legislation is the answer. They're all saying that mental health needs to be improved. So it is going to be a fight, and we'll see if the gun lobby decides to get on board with the president, if they're part of this discussion. There is a lot left that has not been answered when it comes to this very important issue.
Yeah, and in fact, I think the National Rifle Association is going to give some kind of press briefing on Friday, so it'll be interesting to see what they say in that. Patty, for the moment, thanks very much indeed for that. Patty Culhane in Washington, D.C. there.